Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and for today's video I am using the new Ranger alcohol lift ink. So first off, I'm going to create some backgrounds on YUPO paper, like alcohol ink YUPO paper. So these are all 5x7 pieces, and YUPO paper is basically a non-porous surface, which is what you need for the alcohol lift ink to work. If you have not watched Tim Holtz' video on the alcohol lift ink, I highly recommend it. If I remember, I will link to it in the description box below the video. Highly recommend it because he explains it all, like the whole idea behind it, what it does, why it does what it does, etc. So basically though, to use the alcohol lift ink, it's meant to work with the Ranger alcohol inks like I'm using here, a non-porous surface, which is the YUPO paper, and then a porous surface, which would be any sort of like white cardstock. Pretty much anything is going to work, but easiest way to do this is with some white cardstock. So I did my backgrounds first. I was just kind of playing along with different color combos that I hadn't tried before. So with this first one, I was doing Flamingo, alcohol ink, Currant, and Shell Pink. I'm working on my glass media mat. Again, you can work on anything. The glass mat's just really nice because it's easier to clean and it's doesn't get gunked up like other surfaces. I have worked on like scrap paper before as well. That works. But I love this glass mat. It is so worth it. So I'm dropping the colors directly onto the YUPO paper. For whatever reason, this one specifically with the blues, they didn't move. Normally when you drop alcohol inks onto YUPO paper, they just spread. Like you saw it with the first one, you'll see it with the next one. These blues just sat there. It was weird. But I just took my little foam blender and added some alcohol ink blending solution to it. And then just kind of started picking up those inks and tapping them around, and then they just started moving. So what you can also do is put blending solution on the YUPO paper first and then start, dropping in some alcohol inks or dabbing them on. That'll also get them moving. The beauty with this is you can kind of do whatever you want. Another disclaimer, always make sure you're working in a very well ventilated area because these are alcohol inks, you don't want to be sitting here and sniffing all this. So make sure you're working in a very well ventilated area and just be cautious. These are alcohol inks. Everything is very flammable, all that sort of stuff. So I don't have my, heat tool anywhere near. It's always unplugged when I'm working with these. Everything's ventilated. I clean up very well afterwards, etc. Always use caution. There's all the disclaimers and warnings on the packaging, all that stuff. Highly recommend to follow those. So for my last one, I used Honeycomb, Coral, and Peach BELLINI inks. And the same thing, I was just squeezing the inks, just dropping them directly onto the YUPO paper. And then I would just take a foam alcohol ink pad there that I have on my mini ink blending tool. I would put a little bit of the alcohol blending solution onto that, and that's what I was using to kind of move the colors around a bit and dab here and there to create those fun effects. And then sometimes I would also squeeze some of the different colors directly onto that as well, just to move everything around. So after I did all three of those, I set them aside. To clean off my glass mat, I just use a little dab of hand sanitizer. Rubbing alcohol also works. I find that cleans up, especially when I'm using anything alcohol-based, Copic markers, these, anything that wants to be a little more stubborn. A little bit of hand sanitizer cleans it up great, and then I can just wipe it all off, with a clean cloth, and it's good to go. So I have all my backgrounds. So this is where the new alcohol lift ink comes into play. So I have my YUPO paper, which is my non-porous surface with the alcohol inks. And now I'm taking a very large stamp. This is the Honeybee Stamps Zen Floral stamp that came out way back in the beginning that I still just love. So I'm lining this up in my MISTI stamp platform. You don't need a stamp position for this, but it does help. And then I've got plain white cardstock. That is my porous surface. So I am inking up my stamp with the alcohol lift ink, and I'm going to close the lid of my MISTI onto my background here that I've covered with all these different colors of alcohol inks. And the lift ink is literally going to do is going to lift that color off of the background, and it's now sitting on the stamp, and all that color is sitting there. So now I put my white cardstock, just regular white cardstock, into my MISTI, press this down, and then it will transfer all that color onto the white cardstock. So this video is like literally my first attempts at playing with this. It's going to be fun to just experiment with different stamps, different colors, different combos. Another FYI, I did not use any mixatives on my backgrounds, you know, the fun metallic ones. Alcohol ink, the alcohol lift ink pad will not work with those apparently. So yeah, it only works with the regular alcohol inks because the mixatives are they're a totally different like substrate really. So after you stamp it on your non-porous surface there, you want to dab up the color. I just use paper towel. You kind of dab it up and remove any of the excess lift ink there, and it helps to kind of reveal even more of it. And then I make sure to clean my stamps really well after using this because I don't want to leave that lift ink or the like alcohol inks. They will stain your stamps, but I don't worry about that. But I just clean it really good with my stamp cleaner. And then I'm going to show my finished cards here that I did with this first set here. So I die cut all the white cardstock panels and the alcohol ink panels. I die cut those with the Honeybee Stitch Rectangle wafer dies. And then I die cut mats from 2 shades of pink cardstock using the scalloped rectangle dies. And then for these first 2, I used the Special Teacher stamp set and coordinating wafer die to stamp my sentiments, and then I added some little pink jewels. And then for these 2, I used the With Sympathy stamp set and coordinating wafer dies. So, and these ones I left off the jewels, because usually when I'm making like sympathy cards or saying sorry, I don't want to add like bling, you know. So I just die cut the sentiments, and all my die cut sentiments, I ran the cardstock through my little Xyron machines, which I'll show later on in the video, and die cut them multiple times and stack them up for that bit of dimension. And then all of the sentiments I was stamping with either VersaFine Onyx Black, or I would stamp with a coordinating Distress Oxide ink color. So like this one, I used the Worn Lipstick Distress Oxide ink to stamp my sentiments and to stamp on the inside of the cards. So that was the pink set. And then with my yellowy coral colored background, I used the Honeybee Chin Up Buttercup stamp set. So a much simpler stamp for this one, just a single little floral image. You can use anything. I think that's kind of half the fun too, is to kind of experiment to see what kind of results you'll get with different styles of stamps, etc. So same thing. I have my alcohol inked background, my non-porous surface, which is the YUPO paper in my MISTI there. I inked up my stamp with the alcohol lift ink, pressed it down. It picks up all that alcohol ink colors, and then I press that onto my white cardstock. Now, because I used lighter colors, I wanted a deeper impression. So this is where a stamp platform does come in really handy. I cleaned off my stamp because I don't want to re-ink it with the alcohol lift ink. It'll stain your ink pad if there's, you know, alcohol inks on it. So I cleaned off my stamp. I put that background in it again, lined up where it was supposed to be. Used the lift ink again, and so I pulled up even more color, and then I could stamp it a second time onto that white cardstock just to deepen those colors. So if you're not getting, you know, as deeper results as you want, you can stamp it a second time if you have a stamp positioner. So again, I'm just using some clean paper towel to kind of soak up any of that excess lift ink on my background here. And then I'm going to line this up again because I want to stamp the leaf images from the set. And this time I'm only going to do these once. I'm not going to double stamp them like I did before with just the flower and the lift ink. I kind of liked how this ends up just giving it a little bit of a lighter look. So I line them up, ink this up with my alcohol lift ink, press that down on the background. It's going to pull up some of that alcohol ink background. And then I can stamp this right back onto the white cardstock where I had stamped the original flower. So I ended up doing just one background with the white cardstock and ended up getting 2 pieces off of the alcohol ink background. So I made 3 cards with these. And I just used Honeybee's Stacking Banners wafer dies to die cut the backgrounds as well as to die cut some pattern paper. And then I used the Thankful and Grateful stamp set or the Grateful for You stamp set and coordinating wafer dies for my sentiments, just stacking all the die cuts together and then stamping the sentiments with oxide inks on the inside. Added a few jewels. And that, you know, finished off my card. And I will have links to everything I'm talking about. I'll have a supply list and links to everything below the video as well as on my blog. So for my final background here, the one I did with all the blues, I pulled out the Honeybee Zen Ocean stamp set, which is another oldie but goodie favorite. And this again is big. This is a 5x7. That background, that blue background is 5x7. So just to give you an idea of how big this stamp is, like it's huge. So again, lined it up in my MISTI, and I'm going to ink up the stamp with the alcohol lift ink. And then I'm going to press this onto my background. And again, this is nice where when I have the MISTI here, is when I lift it off my background, I notice I missed a couple spots that I didn't press onto. So I can just quickly put that back into place and then press down right on those areas where I didn't press down good enough originally. So now I've picked up all of that color and it's on the stamp, and now I can put in my regular white cardstock and stamp all that color onto my background. So just making sure to kind of press as, you know, evenly as possible. And again, you get just such a different look. And I miss spots, so close that lid, press it down again, and I get more of that ink onto my background. So, and same thing, clean my stamps with, I like to use either the Simon Says Stamp Cleaner, Hero Arts Ultra Clean. You know, clean off my stamps really well to remove that lift ink as well as to remove any alcohol ink on my stamps. And then the alcohol ink background there, I just dab at it with a paper towel, moving it around so I'm not, you know, smearing the ink around. And then once I've dabbed most of it up, I can just brush that paper towel in the background and it reveals that, you know, design. So I die cut both of these pieces with the coordinating Zen Ocean wafer die. And for this one, I'm only going to make 2 cards because they're going to take up like the bulk of my card base. And then I ran some black cardstock through my little Xyron sticker machine here. This is the little 3-inch one. So I ran these 2 pieces of cardstock through that. So now they have adhesive on the back of them. And then I'm going to run this through my die cut machine multiple times with the Honeybee Stamps Goodness Gracious wafer die, just the word die here. So I've die cut this multiple times from that black cardstock. So then all I have to do is peel off the backing and I can stack all these pieces together so that each of these sentiments is 3 layers deep, just to give it that extra depth and dimension that I really like. So I just peel off the backing, stack all these together, and I do this 3 times for each because I die cut 6 of these sentiments from those 2 pieces of black cardstock. And then once those are all stacked together, I am going to adhere these to the outlines that I die cut from some AJ blue cardstock. So same thing, pop these out, peel off the backing, and then I'm going to stick these to the outline. So really quick and easy after I've got everything stacked together here. I don't have to like fiddle around with liquid glue and whatnot. So once I have the sentiment in place, I am just going to flip this over and just use my little craft knife to remove the backing on the dot for the eye. And because it was still being a little bit stubborn and stuck in there, it just made it easier to flip this over, line it up with the die cut sentiment, and then press that right through the back of this release paper, and then the dot in the eye is in the perfect spot. So I did that with both. And then I die cut the banner with the same die set. It comes with this little banner die. So I die cut that, and then I taped off the well goodness portion of the sentiment. Rather than cut apart my stamps, I didn't feel like doing that with this one. I just taped off the gracious words so I could ink up just the well goodness, and I wanted to stamp that onto the banner. And I am using Mermaid Lagoon Distress Oxide ink. And then I'm going to put the tape back into place so I can do this a second time, ink it up with the Mermaid Lagoon ink, remove my tape, and then I can stamp this onto the second banner. So I'm going to, I kept everything kind of simple with all of these cards, doing them sort of similar, since in the end I ended up making 9 cards with all of these alcohol ink backgrounds, and then the white cardstock I stamped with the remaining alcohol ink, etc. So tried to keep things a little bit simpler so that I could get them all done. So to adhere these die cut alcohol ink backgrounds, I'm just using my Xyron Mega Runner and then ran a bunch of adhesive on the back of this, and then I'm adhering this to my white card base. And then the bits I have hanging over, I just flip this over so I can use the edge of the card as a guide to just trim off the excess bits that are hanging over. And I'm going to do this with both the white cardstock as well as my alcohol ink background that I used the lift ink on. So just add my adhesive, adhere this to my card base. All my cards are 4¼ by 5.5 inch standard A2 size note cards. So trim off the backing on these, and then I'm going to adhere my sentiments just using some multi-medium matte adhesive, because I had this out to use for all the jewels and whatnot. If I had been planning a little more ahead, but as usual I was flying by the seat of my pants, I would have run these pieces through my Xyron as well, just have the adhesive on the back of them. But again, hindsight. So adhere the little banner into place, and then I can adhere the die cut word into place just using that multi-medium matte. So once I have the sentiments adhered on both cards, I'm going to finish off the insides by just stamping another sentiment from that same stamp set with the Mermaid Lagoon Distress Oxide ink. So just inking that up, stamping it onto the inside of both cards. And once both of these are stamped, I'm going to add some jewels to these ones, just to give these ones definitely need a little bit of bling. So I have some Lucy's Shimmering Pool jewels, and sprinkle these rather liberally on these backgrounds since there's, you know, a wider area for them. And I was kind of thinking they look cute, like almost like bubbles and stuff too. So just sprinkle those throughout my background. I'm going to adhere those into place with the multimedia matte adhesive, and that's going to finish off these final 2 cards. So like I said at the beginning, definitely check out Tim Holtz' video. Jennifer McGuire also did a very in-depth video about the lift ink as well, with a bunch of cards and techniques and whatnot. So if you haven't already seen them, definitely check them out, because there's tons of info with this. And like I mentioned, I will have links below my video as well as to my blog. On my blog I'll have all the pictures as well as my supply list and links to everything I use, the colors, etc. So you can check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye!